Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a preview at update 7.5 and now this is going to be a pretty big update in World of Tanks. The ATGM'S are being removed, a lot of tanks are getting buffed and a lot are getting nerfed. As well, this will be the update before the Christmas event. So quite a bit is in this update, so I'm just going to run down over everything and give my opinions on it and just basically how significant that buff or nerf is. So right off the bat, of course, first of all, ATGM'S are being removed. So on the Sheridan, the missiles are being replaced with just regular heat, and honestly, it's just the same pin. Obviously, velocity is being buffed up there to 920, and the crew damage is being buffed as well. On the M48 Patton, the tier 10 American medium tank, the dispersion is being buffed, and the dispersion on when you're rotating the turret is being buffed. Vickers Light, the penetration on the AP, the CR, which is its regular ammunition, I think, if I remember correctly, is being nerfed by 5 millimeters. Very small, minuscule buff to the Vickers on that one. There is another nerf to the Vickers. Sorry, nerf, not buff. Nerf to the Vickers on the armor profile that we will get into later. The Batchat 25T is getting its time between its shells buffed from 3 seconds to 2.8. So this is it's a small buff, but it is going to help the tank. It's going to give it around 50 more DPM. The T92E1 as well is getting its ATGMs removed and the exact same statistics for that gun. The Kampfpanzer is getting its heat buffed. Its penetration, whoa, what just happened there? Its penetration is being buffed by 5 millimeters, and the damage by it is getting buffed by 10. The Vickers CR penetration as well is being nerfed by 5, which, again, very small nerf on the Vickers CR right there. The WZ-120, the tier 9 Chinese medium tank, is getting its traverse speed on the terrain nerfed. WZ-111 1-4 is as well getting its traverse speed on terrain nerfed. Same thing for the T-34 too. These are all very small nerfs. It's just going to mean the tank is a little bit slower traversing. Other than that, that's about it. Same thing here on the WZ-110 as well as small traverse nerf. The T-34-1 is getting the exact opposite. It is getting a traverse buff and an engine power buff and a power to rate ratio buff. Here is a very good buff. This has been needed for a long time. The Predator UM is getting its gun depression buffed by 2 degrees, and this is actually a very big buff to the Predator UM. The worst thing about this tank, and the thing that makes the tank not good, is its gun depression. Because the tank is absolutely massive, it is huge, and it is very high up. It can never shoot down on small tanks, and now it is getting a actual okay amount of gun depression. Instead of 5, which is absolutely horrible, 7, which is just okay, but it will make the tank much better. The T-21 is getting an engine power buff as well, and a hard terrain effective power rate ratio buff as well. The Jackson is getting a HP buff, but it is getting a reload nerf, a pretty significant one at that. Which is funny because the Hellcat is getting a buff, but there's another buff on the Jackson that is much more important, I think, and a very big one. But it is getting a pretty significant nerf right here on its DPM, as well as its speed forward is going down by 2 kilometers an hour. Hellcat is getting an absolutely massive buff. The reload is dropping literally 2 seconds. That is a massive buff to the Hellcat. This thing is going to be absolutely broken in the next update. Just look at that DPM on a tier 6. That is just ridiculous. The VK30.02M is getting a speed buff by 5 kilometers, and the Type 58 is getting a engine power buff and a traverse speed buff. Getting into the armor profile buffs, I have these all set, and the first one up is the M60. It is getting a frontal plate buff on the armor right there. So that will help it get more bounces when it is angling. The Vickers Light is getting a mantlet nerf, as you can see right there. The mantlet of the tank is getting a small nerf. That will help it because one of the crazy things about the Vickers is the turret has actually got very good armor. The Vickers CR is getting as well a massive turret nerf on there, but the turret is still so small it's going to make it very minuscule. The T-2020 is getting a slight upper plate buff, which is very needed. This tank has been known as the Turd 2020 because of how horrible it is. Still, though, the tank is absolutely crap. Predator is getting another buff as well. It is getting a frontal plate buff and a side armor buff. And this is a very big buff. This tank, it's going to actually be a pretty decent tank, I feel now. It's going to have more armor. It's going to have more gun depression. And this is a very important thing. Now, this is an interesting thing right here. They are completely redesigning the chassis. Look at this. Look at the difference. They're completely redesigning the chassis, shaving off some of the hole and sticking up that turret a little bit taller. So, a little bit of an interesting thing right there. Not really an armor change, just kind of redesigning the tank. The M4A3E8 is getting a, what is this getting? Oh, side of the turret is getting a armor buff. So, less of a chance to get a cheat. Here is the buff on the Jackson that I was talking about. That is very important. Just look at this armor buff. Look how much thicker that is. The sides can't be HE'd anymore. The front actually can bounce some damage, like the tier 5-1, how it has that thick frontal upper plate. So this is a very big buff to the Jackson, but since it got that DPM buff, I mean nerf, I still think the tank is crap, especially when you compare it to the Hellcat. The MT25 is getting a, I don't even know what this is getting. I literally cannot tell what this is getting. It looks like maybe a side armor, tiny bit of the frontal. I really don't know. It looks so little of a difference that I don't think it matters. T-34-2 is getting, what is this getting? It looks like the top of the tank is getting a very slight buff on the armor on the top of the turret. So a very minuscule buff there. That won't matter too much. KV-2 with the non-derp gun, it looks like, is getting a buff on the turret, on the top of the turret right there. So a very insignificant buff as well. VK38.01P is as well getting a turret buff on top of it. So that might actually help because it's getting that right there. It will help it bounce more on the top part of the turret. The VK30.01D is getting, looks like a nerf. Is that a nerf or buff on the armor? I can't really tell. It looks like a buff on the hatch on top of the tank. So now it looks like it can't be HE'd. VK30.02M is getting a very significant frontal plate buff that will definitely help that tank stop being bad. Cromwell is getting, it looks like a nerf on the armor on the top of the turret. So that's interesting. And the Type 58 is getting, what is this getting? I honestly can't tell what this is getting. So minuscule, it doesn't really matter. So that is all the buffs and nerfs and changes in Update 7.5. There are, like I said, a ton. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.